So I'll read this very, very briefly. Segun Olude is a seasoned graphic designer and a design educator with an impressive track record of developing professional and institutional brands and identities. His portfolio showcases his expertise in editorial design, event branding, signage. He works with several NGOs and several corporations. He's with the University of Manitoba. Like I mentioned earlier, is a seasoned instructor. He lectures them in designing and secular and teaching various courses, including graphic designs, history of visual communications, and design theory and criticism. You can check him out at sheguolude.com. You'll see a lot of his work there, and you can also follow his journey on Instagram at Shegu Olude. Shegu is Segunuolude. And on that note, we welcome everybody in here. Our second speaker as well, I think he will be joining in about 5 minutes. He said to give him about 5 minutes. So, but before we delve into that, we'll just have Uncle Olude run us through his journey on how he got into graphic designing. Is it something he started as a child? Is it something how he fell in love with graphic designing? Take it away, sir.
Thank you, and good to be here. When I listen to people introducing me, I'm like, what? I did that? So it's always interesting to hear someone tell you, oh, this is what you've done. Well, my journey into graphic design and ultimately all the other aspects of it, including branding, started at age 17. Right after high school, I was very lucky to be in a place where I was hired by in those days, they called them advertising agencies. I don't know if they still call them that now. And I was employed as a graphic design assistant, basically just to follow the people who were real graphic designers and do whatever they needed to get done. So from there, I really got to know what graphic design is and ended up going to technical college, Yaba College of Technology in Lagos, Nigeria. Got my national diploma and ultimately ended up here in Canada to, at the time, learn more about graphic design. And of course, here we are, talking about design and branding and everything in between after all the years of working as a designer. So that's pretty much my journey.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And I was also going to ask, I know it's been an interesting journey. So 17 years now down to now. What are the major differences you've seen in how the profession is being practiced now and back in the day when you were just coming in?
When I started, I think people had their own expertise and they stayed on those tracks right through their careers. So you'd have a marketing manager, you'll have the graphic artists, as they were called at that time. You have the salespeople, you have account managers, you have all these people in between the client and the designer. So you might have up to 6 different people looking after one client. I think today where we are with independent entrepreneurs and the change in the marketplace, we've come down to where one person might be doing the job of 6 people. And that's significant. The other thing that's changed are the tools we used. In those days, things were done by hand. Almost everything was done by hand, so you had to have the skill. And the marketing manager or the person in charge of the client would always come back to you and say, hey, this is what we need to get done, tell you the ideas and so on. And you generate the ideas. With the changes that have happened over the years with our tools, we're now at a place where anybody can do anything, literally. And the designer doesn't even have to be consulted sometimes.
Hmm.
So the market is so different today that you really have to know what you're doing, have your skills in place to still be relevant, because you may also end up being the one who does everything because the tools give you the ability to do that. So the market has really, really changed. And one of the things that drive this change is technology.
Yeah.
First, we're doing by hand, and now we're at the point where we're doing it with computers. And we're moving into a new season with AI, where things are going to change again. So over the years, there have been several stages of change, and navigating those changes is very important.
Thank you very much. And I like how you went all the way into AI. We're going to come into that and how, someone in this profession can stay relevant in the age of AI. And especially that agencies and organizations now lump up all the work to one person. So they're saying, oh, we're employing you as, for instance, the graphic designer, but then you're the one thinking about how to plan content, you're producing content, and we don't have budget anymore for graphics or for designing. So how do we, as professionals in this field or new entrants into this field, keep how do we keep our jobs? How do we stay online in line with, everything happening with technology and the marketplace?
Well, I think recognizing change
Mm.
and adapting to it is one of the things that would keep us going. I recognized change was coming from working with my hand, doing drawings by hand, doing lines by hand, always getting my hands dirty. I recognized there was a change coming with computers. So I ended up in Canada solely for learning how to use the computer in my job, and I was going to go back home and do great things. But everywhere in the world at that time, people were looking for designers that were computer literate.
Mm.
Almost every job advertisement will be asking for keyboard skills, because it's not just the typists that were typing letters anymore. Everybody was looking for someone who could navigate this new thing. So always thinking one step ahead gives one the advantage to stay relevant in the marketplace. I would say being employed is secondary to that. If you know your stuff, you would always be in employment, or you'll be creating employment. I think it's very important for us to not think we're at the bottom end of the food chain, but among those who are going to drive change and create change. So it's helped me so far, and we'll see what happens with AI. I keep mentioning that because it's coming.
Because it's coming, it's actually here already. Those are words on marble. They're really great. One has to be prepared for the change so that when it comes or when it hits, you're ready to rock and roll. So my next question is more into going into the nitty-gritty of why we're here. Designing and brand positioning. What role does the design you adopt as a brand play in all of this, in helping you position properly to the world out there?
One of the things that I would want to mention first when talking about things like this is that we all see the same things, regardless of where you are. Like in North America here, if you watch television, you'll see the same shows. If you go to the movies, you see the same movies. And probably worldwide, the same movies will be translated into different languages, and same advertisements might be adapted for different audiences, and so on and so forth. So we've come to a place where there's a sort of a global understanding of what brand and branding is. The marketplace is so vast now, where once all you had to be concerned about was the sign over your shop. You have a shop selling merchandise, you could say merchandise sold here, and that's it. Everybody goes there from the local area. But today, you can say merchandise sold here and put that in a blog. It would work.
Yeah.
So understanding the market and the change that has happened and the people that you're talking to and the fact that your customers might be coming from as far as Brazil while you are situated in Canada, and your customers might be going to you from South Africa while you're situated in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And the competition also has become global.
Mm.
So we now have to pay attention to what our brand looks like. And of course, there are layers to this brand. It's like a piece of cake with 7 layers or more, depending on how you want to look at that. So if you recognize those layers and you pay attention to those layers, then you're able to effectively brand a product or a company for whatever market space they're going to be in.
Okay. Thank you very much. So in branding a product or a company, what are the major things we should be looking at? What role does color, for instance, play in a certain industry, or does it matter what color you choose to go with? How do they speak to that brand? How do you create brand elements or brand identities that would speak to a particular service or services that your brand delivers?
Okay. Color, it's an interesting thing. One, you have local understanding of color, where in one place white might represent purity, in another place white represents death. So local understanding of color is very important. You have to, of course, decide what your market space is before going into the color that you're going to use for your brand and all that. So if you're working with just a small group of people or a small target audience, your ability to choose the right color is probably easier. But if you're working with a worldwide audience, that becomes a second issue. And I would like to preface that by saying that our understanding of color may seem universal, but it's always local. So I've seen brands that use, say, the color red in one place, and they change it to purple in another place, just because they're trying to be locally relevant. But that's for physical products. So understanding the global context of the product that you're positioning and understanding the local context where it's going to be used is really, really important before selecting a color. And I would like to give an example of where color sends a message well, let me just tell the story. Many years ago, rider trucks, you could rent them, for moving goods from place to place, for packing, unpacking, and all that. And they were all yellow with rider written on them. So the trucks were all yellow. But then there was an unfortunate incident in the States where somebody rented one of those trucks, loaded it up with incendiaries, and went to blow up a building. And that rider truck was in millions of photos around the world. Shortly after, rider changed their color from yellow to white. So today you see white rider trucks everywhere. Now that's an intentional use of color. So like I said, branding is like a layered cake, and you have to really pay attention to what layer you're dealing with and how you slice it. So color is so important. I'm looking at your image now. I'm looking at the purple. I'm reading meaning to the purple because of my own understanding of purple. But somebody else might have a very different opinion of purple. So it's best to always do some research. It could be a local research, it could be more extensive if it's going to be a worldwide brand.
Thank you very much for that. What I hear is localizing your message or your brand assets to fit, your local audience. And in communications as well, in marketing, that's what we see. Whatever you're putting out there, make sure it's local to your audience so that it's not misinterpreted. Thank you very much for that, sir. We also have Nathan Obi now in the house. Like I mentioned earlier, there was a little bit of a mix-up with the time difference from Nigeria. For those joining in from Nigeria here, they thought it was 7, and we had to drag him in earlier than he had assumed. Thank you very much for being here, Nathan. The next question will be going to you, so we'll rush you in. So, I want you to walk us through how you determine, like the brand identities for a particular brand. So let's say, for instance, it's a company that offers services in cybersecurity. What are the things you put in that you put into perspective when designing their brand, or choosing their typography or the elements that make up the brand? And please, if we have questions, let's feel free to drop them in the chat, and then we'll throw it out to our experts. So how do you start, work on a particular brand? What are the things you look out for? What, gives you just walk us through that journey.
Oh, great. Right. First of all, I'm sorry that about the little mix up with the timing. So, okay. Determining the elements of a brand actually involves a comprehensive process, and it blends strategic thinking with creative execution. So I'd like to list them out in a little of a step-by-step approach that I usually use for this kind of tasks. So first of all, I would discuss with the brand to know what are the brand values, what the brand stands for, their mission, their vision, their ethos, what they are about. Because, of course, this brand is about something. So you need to know what it's about. You can't just design anything out of thin air. So, secondly, after you've ascertained what the brand is about, we like to know what the target audience is. It's very important that we know what the target audience is. Then, because designing beautiful brand elements for the wrong audience is not going to sell.
Yeah.
It's not going to sell. Then, thirdly, you also try to determine what the brand personality is. Is it a playful or a serious brand? Is it a luxurious brand? Is it a budget-friendly brand? Is it a traditional or a modern brand? All of these will help to determine what the style and tone of the brand is. Then, after this has been done, we like to engage in a little bit of a competitive analysis where
I think we lost Nate for a second there. We'll probably come back to him. But before we get back to him, Uncle Shagu, if you can run us through. Oh, yes, I would ask that as well. Yes, you can run us through maybe mistakes, that brands make or graphic artists make in building collateral for brands. Common mistakes.
I think you've heard me speak generally most of the time. And the reason I do that is I have to find an analogy. Okay, here's one. Okay. So let's say you have 10 houses of different sizes. One is a small house and you have one single family that lives there. Another house is an apartment complex, 20 floors, and you have multiple families that live there. You then have to decide what kind of key would open a door for the small house and how many keys you need to open the doors for the families that live in the large apartment complex. So one of the mistakes that smaller brands make is that they're looking for 24 different keys to open one door, where they don't have to be concerned about certain things. They should just focus on what they do, how they do it best, and, tell the story and be done, and not worry about the multiplicities of all the, complexities that come with the bigger building. So the mistake another one would make living in a big apartment or wanting to get through to every apartment is to say, I'm going to use just one key to open every door. That's not going to be possible.
Yeah.
So in determining how a brand would perform, it's a joint responsibility. Without market research, most brands will fail. But if we go, because we have joint audience between Nigeria and Canada here, if we go back to the traditional ways in a place like Nigeria, traditional ways before colonization, there was nothing like brand the way we know it today.
Yeah.
You do what you know how to do, you do it well, and people know you for what you do. That is a brand element that is sometimes missing from startups who haven't done anything before. They just start something and all of a sudden they want their brand to be recognized. It's a very different way of thinking. It's not that it's wrong. I'm just saying, like, context all the time about who the audience is, where they are, what you want to say to them, what you want them to know about you. So again, in general terms, those are the things that could cause success or failure for a brand.
Thank you very much for sharing that insight. So we'll go back to Nate again. So Nate, you take us briefly into how you got into this journey of, designing for brands. Where has that gotten you to? And I also want you to speak to getting into graphic designing and, especially for new entrants, what are the first steps you should be looking at? What are the kind of courses or certifications you'll be looking at? Uncle Shegun will touch on this because we're in two different regions. So I want to see if the same thing is obtainable in both continents or, they are totally different. So Nate, you go first. Walk us through your journey. And as a new entrant into this field, what should one be looking at? How should we pursue it? Again, we have so many technological helps right now. Everybody on Canva thinks they're a graphic artist, myself included. So is this the right way to go, or what are the steps we should be looking at?
Okay. So my journey into graphic design is actually took a bit of a winding path because I didn't set out to go into graphic design. So it was actually, I began from a very young age, just learning how to use the computer. I think I was still in secondary school then. So the first time I actually worked on a project was for a client. I didn't even have my own computer. He had a computer in his house, come to the house, help me with things. So I helped him lay out some books, and that was my first foray into graphic design. Then I did a bit of a stint in would I call it a company? It wasn't really a design company. I did data analysis for them, but on the side I was doing graphic design. So the way I learned design was by going to watch people design. So I'd go to some design houses, sit there, and just watch them design. For the most part, for the first 5 years of my design journey, the first part, I didn't even have my own personal computer. So I'll go there, sit there, watch them design, then go to church. Church had a computer, then use the church computer to practice. But of course, thankfully, these days, it's a lot better. It's a lot better these days. There's YouTube, there's Coursera, there's Udemy, there's lots of avenues to get into design. That being said, the proper way to get into design these days is if you are available, if you are able, you can easily get a degree in design if you are in an area that offers that. I don't know of many Nigerian universities that offer that anyway. That offer design as a degree. So you can have, but I think there are colleges that offer something of the sort. But majorly, if you want to go into design from this part of the world, take courses, online courses. You can do your advanced certifications, and then majorly that. But then, first of all, another thing I like to point out is you have to be sure design is what you want to do. You have to be sure it's something you have a passion for. Because I see a lot of people wanting to go into design because they see it as an easy in, quick cash out kind of thing. So I can just jump in, do a few things on Canva and get paid. But that's not really design. That's not really professional design. That's just it gets quick. And even that is not a get rich quick scheme in itself. It's not. But some people see that if I can do it on my phone and just use Canva, go into design and get paid. But if you want to get into design, you have to be sure first of all that it's something you want to do for the long haul, you want to actually do it. And then decide what kind of design you want to do. Because if you want to do, let's say, editorial design, you have to learn InDesign, you have to learn Photoshop. If you want to learn, let's say, logo creation and branding, you have to learn Illustrator. You want to learn, if what you're going into is, let's say, concept art and compositions, you have to learn Photoshop. So you have to be sure exactly what it is you're going into and then learn the appropriate software. So Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, Sketch, Figma, pick your choice, but be sure that that's exactly what you want to do. So once you picked out, there's a ton of courses, both YouTube courses that are free and then paid courses on Udemy, Coursera, LinkedIn, and the rest of them. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So go to Uncle Shegun now to see if it's about the same.
Sorry, I missed that.
I was asking, courses, new entrants into the field can take, or what should that line look like?
Similarly to what Nathan had described, there are many paths to the same place. Some here could take several courses, especially when they're transitioning from one profession to the other, might take several courses online, learn a few skills, and sometimes for free, sometimes paid. He mentioned Coursera, and there's also YouTube where a lot of people learn things, and I'll come to qualify this later on. And all of a sudden they know how to design. But the path that I took and that I recommend to many people is go to school, learn design, because design is not just one word. It's composed of several little bits before you could say design. And some of it is typography. So when you look at the work of a designer that went to school to get the education and someone who didn't have someone mentoring or sitting with them through a class, sometimes it's very quick and noticeable, which of course keeps people like me employed forever because we're always fixing things that didn't work somewhere else. But, there are schools like polytechnics that offer design, universities offer design, and you can take it as far as you want to go. But along with those, you're also learning new tools and the changes in the tools that you use every day. For instance, Adobe Creative Suite, it's always been updated. They're always adding things to it. So you have to keep abreast of what's happening with your tools. So to sort of summarize what I was saying, there are many paths to getting into the profession. One is self-learning, going online, using all sorts of resources, learning from courses that have been canned that would help you work through certain exercises. Mm-hmm. But the path that I always recommend is going to school, maybe a polytechnic or university or technical college, because there's the skills part of this, mm-hmm. where you learn how to use the applications and what you need to do the job. And then there's the knowledge part of it, where you need to understand what it means to do what you're doing. You need to understand things like color, you need to understand psychology, you need to understand all sorts of subjects that are not directly related to the crafting of what you do. So it's the balance of your skills and the knowledge that you gain. And then on top of that, the experience, because we talk about lifelong learning, you keep up with all the changes that are happening in the marketplace. So those three combine to make you relevant. I think the certificate itself is becoming less and less important in some places, especially for some new opportunities that are coming up, because the branches of this tree called design and branding keeps growing and keeps diverging every day. So there are some areas where you really could basically walk into it and become your own boss.
Okay. I would also like to know, are there like regulatory laws guiding this profession, especially in a place like Canada? So that, I won't just wake up tomorrow and say, oh, I've done some Canva practices and yes, I can start making the same money as Uncle Shego. Do we have laws that protect your intellectual property?
Well, laws protecting intellectual properties are always there based on who created what, who worked on what. Did you do it on your own or in collaboration with other people? So you have to know all those different laws. That's one thing. Well, how do you get to know those? Is by being part of a professional body, like being part of Designers of Canada or being part of any other professional body, regardless of what your profession is, there's always a body that certifies your knowledge. And part of that is having ethics, knowing the ethics of what you're getting into, what I can and cannot do, especially in a place like Canada. You also respect other people's proprietary rights, and their intellectual properties. You have to learn to respect those as part of your profession. So if a client is saying, oh, just go on the internet and get a logo for XYZ company and just use it in the brochure. As a professional, to say no. You go get permission, you get the logo, you send it to me, and then I'll use it. So you are going to be in a position where if somebody says, hey, how did you get that? The client gave it to me. And then the client has to explain how they got it. There are all sorts of layers to this, but it's becoming more complex these days. And funny thing, even AI generated images have a copyright.
Oh, yeah.
So we have to be aware of these issues as we go along.
Okay. It is interesting. I would like to know, Nate, do we have professional bodies in Nigeria that also kind of like protect and dish out the ethics of the profession? Do we have stuff like that?
Unfortunately, none that I'm aware of.
Okay.
There are none. Everybody's doing their thing right now, so it's more like every man for themselves at the moment.
Okay. So when it comes to like pricing, because I would like to say, for instance, if I'm in Canada, like how do you price yourself in the market? Like how does an organization know, oh, Uncle Shego should be at this scale and someone like maybe Abby should just be at the lower level because she doesn't have the required qualifications? Is there a way to judge apart from seeing what you do?
Okay, when it comes to pricing, everybody will always want to get a cheaper deal if they can't get a cheaper deal. So no company, almost no company will want to pay you more if they can pay you less. So it's about what value are you bringing to them. So you have to be able to negotiate in terms of the value you are bringing to them.
Okay.
So you tell them, this is what I'm offering you. It doesn't matter if you've been 10 years in the game or 1 year in the game. Can you deliver? Do you have what it takes to interpret the brief that has been given to you? So then when it comes to cross-border negotiations, let's say someone in Nigeria working for a client who is, let's say, in the West, or someone anywhere else in the world, making the conversions from Naira to maybe USD and the rest of that. You calculate it based on whatever the exchange rate is, calculate it based on the hourly rate, and then give the rates. But first of all, the first
and Nigeria happened to us. Uncle Shego will take it in there.
I would pick up on the word that he used, value. How do you establish value? There are so many ways to get there. But what I tell students that are coming into the market or younger designers is to first understand what it is their profession entails. For me, I like to keep it simple and say, what you have is your 3 T's: your time, your talent, and your technique. There's a 4th one that I'll add to it, but your time is valuable. How much time are you going to spend on this thing that you're going to do? Your technique is the skill that you've developed over time and how you've maintained it. Someone may come into the market today, they haven't used a particular software before, but you have maybe 10 years on that. It affects your technique. So if you value your time and you know that you have talent, that's why you're in this business in the first place. We've devalued talent in the arts generally across the world. It's only now that we know that talent actually counts for something. So it's the time you've spent from when you were a child honing your talent and the technique that you've developed that all adds to the talent that you have today. So that is part of the value that you're bringing to any project. So your time, your talent, and your technique must all be paid for by someone. Gone are the days when you say, we're going to have this thing. Just tell the design. Don't you have a cousin that's a designer? Let them just do a poster for us. Meanwhile, you've paid the caterer, you've paid the event coordinator and the people who would set up the hall, you've paid for your clothes, but the guy who's going to design the poster, just tell them they're talented. Let them do a poster for us. So there's no value seen from the client side, if you want to call them a client. But when you have a proper client, you have to sit down, think of that value. I like the word that Nathan brought into it. The value comprises all these things, and that's what you have to sell. And what is number 4 in the T's? Technology. You have to have the right computer or the right tools for the job, and somebody has to pay for it. So as part of what you're working on, you make sure that you're adding the value of that tool that you're using into the whole mix, because you have to replace it every 3 years or every 4 years. And those are the basic building blocks of establishing value. And then, of course, there are other aspects too, but I want to keep it as simple as possible and understandable, that it's your talent, it's your technique, it's your time, and of course, you're going to use something to make it, which is your technology. So,
thank you very much, sir. Just 1 or 2 more questions, and I think we'll let you go. One of the things I was going to ask is, how would using the wrong design or brand assets make or mar an organization? So does it have a major role to play in the success of an organization, like a mid or large organization?
If you don't mind, could you describe a little bit what you mean by using the wrong asset?
So for instance, like one of the things you mentioned earlier, saying color. Maybe I go to a community where red is a taboo, and in maybe it's McDonald's coming in, and we know that's like their major color. They go into that kind of community. Would you say it would affect their bottom line? So would their target audience gravitate towards them irrespective of what their brand colors are or what their brand looks like, if they are creating value in other ways? What role would your branding play in how you affect or how you connect with your audience.
Okay. So if we have to talk about this, we have to include other aspects of branding in the conversation. Color is just one thing. Let me take Starbucks, for instance. They have their green, and the green shows up on almost everything in every country. But there are some countries where they've actually translated the name Starbucks, along with using the English version, into a scripted language where Starbucks is written in the local language. That is localization. So they're not saying it has to be this way all the time, but they're localizing as they go. The color may remain the same, but the wordings change, the language change. The way the Starbucks looks, the interior of the Starbucks looks in North America, it's pretty standard in different places. You know, they established that for North America. So even in Canada and in the US, they have similarities. But if you go to a place like Japan, a Starbucks could be in a location where they don't have the kind of design aesthetics that we're used to here. They adapt to that. So learning to adapt the message, and your brand is a message, to the local audience is so important all the time. And it requires research, it requires local knowledge, it requires being sensitive to the location and the people that live there, instead of imposing what you think, this is my brand, this is how I'm going to use it, and it's got to be consistent. So consistency then is a key, but consistency with a little bit of adaptability.
Consistency with adaptability, that's key. Okay, so I don't know if we have questions, please we can either show by way of raising our hand or by typing it in the comment section, and then we can put it forward. I know there was a question about APCON and ACON there in Nigeria. APCON regulates production of TV materials, radio materials. I'm not sure they do so much. They just want to check for language, they're checking for design, but they're not looking into quality. They're not, they do. I don't think, I might be wrong, I'm open to correction, but I'm not sure they go into details, especially when it comes to branding and all that. They don't bog themselves with that. And I actually invited them here. I don't know if anybody from APCON is here, but I can't be corrected, but from what I know, they don't really go. They go more into vetting your ad materials to see if it's up to standard, if you're using the right wordings and all of that. Thank you for being back again, Nathan. But on a final note, I want to ask small businesses, because of funding and budgeting constraints, they tend to lump up all this work into one person. How do you think they can maybe open up a little bit? Or what advice would you have for them in trying to open it up to, so making sure that professionals are handling what they should be handling, as against making the graphic person, especially in the age of digital now, you're the social content creator, you're the one doing the social management, you're still the graphics or the designer for the brand. How do we break this down, or what advice do we have so that they can, do better?
Okay, first of all, I'd like to apologize. My network keeps going up. So, my message to brands that try to convert a graphic designer into a social media manager and be a marketing personnel is, please don't. A graphic designer is not a social media manager, and it's also not because the truth of the matter is these roles have different skill sets. Sometimes it may seem as if they overlap, but it's they all require different skill sets. So, for example, the graphic designer who is trained in the art of visual communication, typography, color theory, layout design. The primary focus of a graphic designer is to create visually compelling materials that will effectively communicate the brand's message. What the marketing personnel is meant to bring is market research, strategy, the development and maybe campaign execution. So asking a graphic designer to go into market research and strategy development, unless what you're looking for is half-baked marketing, a half-baked marketing gig. Because if I, as a graphic designer, want to do marketing for you, I definitely will not be able to give you the best of what a marketer would do. I would be able to give you the best of what a social media manager would do. Social media manager has to do the whole creating and curating of the content, engaging the audience, analyzing social media. I can't do that. So can a graphic designer do all of this? Yes, if he tries to pick those up as extra skills, he can do it. But most times, graphic designers want to specialize in graphic design, which is the core of their role. And then there are people who specialize in marketing, there are those who specialize in social media. So as much as possible, I advise brands to hire people for the roles they want. If what you want is a graphic designer, get the graphic designer. If what you want is a social media manager, get a social media manager. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Uncle Shego.
I have to agree with what he said in that we have skill sets, and that's what makes us tick. You can't be somebody you're not. But a lot of small businesses don't have the budget to hire all these people. So now if we flip the marketplace around, I, as a graphic designer, should have a marketing manager that I work with. So that if somebody approaches me and says, hey, we're trying to do this, I'll be like, okay, I'm a graphic designer, but I have somebody who is in marketing. The marketing person says, oh, I have somebody who would do the social media. So we'll form a team. Because you don't always have the company model where, you have everybody in the company coming to serve you. So we form teams for different projects. There are times when I have an illustrator, a photographer, and I have just somebody who's like a PA, making sure we all do what we're supposed to do. And that's what we need for that project. So for different projects, you have different needs. So it's good for us, the professionals, to start thinking different about how we work with one another.
Thank you very much. I've seen people, and myself included, even here in Canada, where, like you rightly mentioned, you're the graphics person, you're the social person, you're the photographer, and you're bringing all this. You're the marketing person as well. You're bringing the sales person. So you're bringing all these skill sets together to serve just one particular role. And I think we need to have a talk with HR as well, to advise management, especially for the bigger organizations, to be able to, like you rightly said, segment these roles and let people do what they are best at and be judged by that, and not, bring everything together. Yes, we're employing you and you have to do all these things at once. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks for telling us that you'll talk to HR, because some of the new job advertisements, I'll never get a job. It's like you do this, you do that, and okay, I can do this one, and I'm very good at it, but I can't do this, I can't do that. So I'll never get a job. And they lump everything together. Some advertisements I've seen lately will say, we're looking for someone to be in the front office, but they must be able to do graphic design, social media, and update our website.
What was that?
I could never get a job.
When I see those kind of
Exactly.
And especially for new immigrants, coming into a country where they're just trying to get their fruits, they would say yes to about anything. And yes, rightfully so. They are able to do some of this, but then they might not excel in their chosen field because they are lumping everything together. As a matter of fact, there was a role. I was a driver on top of doing all of these other things. But again, you sometimes see yourself taking on those roles because it's what has been spelled out for you, and that's where you need to end me. So thank you very much for sharing your insights today. I want to take final words from Nate, and then we'll go to Uncle Shego. And if there's anyone that wants to drop any comment, also the floor will be open for you.
Let me first.
Yes, please.
All right. So my final words to brands is don't just, first of all, be sure of exactly what it is your brand is about before you employ the services of a graphic designer. Because sometimes I've seen cases where the brand calls me to work on a brand to create brand elements for them, and they're not even sure themselves of what exactly the brand is. So be sure of exactly what your brand is, because it's what you tell me I'm going to use to create for you. So be sure of exactly what your brand is. And once you're sure of that, it makes my work easier. It makes all our lives so much easier.
And for those that are wanting to come into this field, what would you be saying to them?
Oh, it's actually a lucrative field. It's a good field. It's actually a good field to come into. So first of all, just be sure that this is exactly what you want to do. This is exactly where you want to be. And once you're sure it's what you want to do and where you want to be, take the necessary courses. You need to go to school for it. Go to school for it. You want to take what you want to take online courses. There's a lot of starter courses you can take on YouTube, Udemy, Coursera, at least to give you a leg up, open your eyes to what exactly this field entails. And once you have those and you're sure that's what you want to do for the long term, take advanced courses, go to school, get a degree, get your softwares right, and then come in. It's exciting. It's really exciting. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Uncle Shegun.
For me, branding generally is communication. So communication entails the right kind of writing, the right kind of visuals, and you bring the right people together to do that. So to be able to build a brand, you've got to have your language that you use standardized, and have somebody who's doing writing, have somebody who's doing the design part, have somebody who's doing the posting and making sure that things get on various media. So if you can put all of those together, then you get all the layers of that cake that I've been talking about. It's delicious.
Thank you so much. A wrap for today. Thank you very much for joining in. We'll be posting this on YouTube as well for those that were not able to join in to watch. And then we'll have another section next month. It will be on photography, so watch out for that as well. Thank you very much, and have a good afternoon and good night in Nigeria.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to see everyone.
Yeah. Goodbye.